I said it before and I'll say it again. You do not have to be a scientist to go into marine conservation or to protect the ocean. It's very important that you know that. And you know what I love is the fact that I have an example for you today. On today's conservation story, we are talking to Alvise Ca'Zorzi, who works for a company called Blue Seeds and works in conservation, and he has a business background. We're going to find out more about his conservation story and journey today on the episode. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I am your host, Andrew Lewin, and this is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, what you can do to speak up for the ocean, and how you can live for a better ocean by taking action. Now, today's episode, we're going to be talking about a conservation journey from one of the people in the audience who said, you know what? Andrew said that he wants to hear conservation journeys from his audience members, and I am going to tell it because I am proud of my conservation journey. He is a 27-year-old Italian Brazilian who was raised in on a Spanish island and then moved to France and really recently started working on a marine conservation financing for a company called Blue Seeds, supporting MPA projects to enhance their economical, ecological, and social impact. He's talking today about how he went from a business background and a project management background to, with lots of experience around the world, to an MPA like working for an MPA financier and working with moorings in the Mediterranean. It's an amazing story. He's even got his I think he's got his dive masters, loves the ocean, and he wanted to talk and come on the podcast to show that, you can do marine conservation. You can protect the ocean even if you don't have a science background. And I know I say this a lot and you probably may be sick of it, but I'm going to tell you, there's so many people, the first time I talk to them, they say, I want to be a marine biologist. I want to work to protect the ocean. I'm going to go back and do my marine biology degree, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But you do not have to be a scientist to go into marine conservation. And Alvise just proved it. We're just one example of a lot of people who work in conservation in a variety of different career paths. But he is one who does it, and I'm so proud of him for coming on the podcast and saying, his piece and sharing his journey. Before we get to Alvise's interview, I want to just let people know that if you want to have a career in marine science and conservation, all you have to do is sign up to my program, Build Your Career in Marine Science and Conservation, and you can get help. You can get strategy tips on how to put an application together, how to plan your career even, and we go over job descriptions and job ads and saying, hey, you know what? If you want to apply to this job, this is how I would apply for it if I qualified. And I go through each and every point. I do it every week, and it's a monthly membership, only $5 a month, to really put a lot of value into your career and have a rewarding career. So if you want to sign up for this program, you can do so at speakupforblue.com/career. That's speakupforblue.com/career. And here is the interview with Alvise Ca'Zorzi. Enjoy, and I will talk to you after. Hey, Alvise, welcome to the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Are you ready to talk about your conservation story?
Yes, excited. Thank you for inviting me.
You bet. This is, this is part of a series that we're doing here on How to Protect the Ocean, where we're talking about people's conservation journey, their story, why they love the ocean so much. And Alvise, when you reached out and said, hey, I want to be on the podcast, I want to tell my journey, I was super excited to hear, because a lot of the times when I have guests on, they're ocean scientists or they have a background in science and they're involved in marine conservation. Your story is a little different. You kind of showed and proved what I've been saying for a long time, that you don't have to be a scientist to get into marine conservation. And so we're going to talk about that. But what I want to do is get the full breadth of your journey and then seeing where, maybe we could talk about where you want your career to go, because you're a young guy. You want to see where you can take this to the next level. And so I'm looking forward to talking about that. But before we do, Alvise, why don't you just kind of let the audience know who you are and what you do?
Yes, of course. So actually, I grew up in Mallorca, in Spain, which is an island in the middle of the Mediterranean. So, and my father always had a house in front of the sea and all. So I was always got used to go there for sailing,
Nice.
swimming, everything. So that was at least at the start how I got closer to the ocean. But at that point, honestly, I was not really thinking about getting into marine conservation and everything. Honestly, I was just good in science, in mathematics, physics, this kind of stuff. And I was in a French school, in a French high school in Mallorca.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was 18 years old, I was not pushed, but my teachers were advising me to go to really nice universities of science in France, in Prepa. So I was
Right.
like, okay, I will give it a try. And honestly, at start, it was not definitely not what I expected. It was like too much, actually too much work. Also, it is known as the Prepa, which is really intensive. And honestly, it was not the rhythm that I was looking for. And
Okay.
at that point, I was not really sure about what I wanted to actually do. So after, as I was still in science, I was like, okay, I will try civil engineering. So it's nothing to do again, like restarted.
Yeah.
And again, that year really, it was kind of interesting, but I knew that it was not exactly the thing that I wanted to do. So
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to do something a little bit more international. And it went then, I redid my university and I started first year for the third time, this time in international relations. And from that point, it was really interesting because it got me a lot of traveling opportunities, a little bit around the world. And at that point, I was like, okay, I want to do something that it's a bit international, but I wanted to have impact. I just knew that I wanted to do something positive impact in society and environment. But I didn't know at that point exactly how I wanted to do it. So after a while, I decided to actually take 2 years of traveling. And during those 2 years, I decided to go to Asia and Australia, everything, to actually have the goal of finding what was exactly what I wanted to do, like what was the deepest, most sensitive topic for me that I
Mm-hmm.
would like to help out. And actually, when I was in Thailand, I ended up in Koh Tao, which is known as a big diving island. And over there, I actually just started a little bit diving and actually completely loved the first dives that I did there. It was so actually amazing because what I love is for traveling. And here it was diving is really exploring the sea, the animals, everything. And it seems like you don't have how to say, you see the animals just live their life, just go along, just
Mm-hmm.
do their things. A lot easier than in the land. If you see some kind of an animal, they will be a lot more scared of your presence. So
Right.
from that point, I was like really impacted by the what I've seen during the divings. And at that point, I decided like, okay, actually, I think this could be kind of it. I want to stay longer and see what it called what I can see from there. So I decided to stay like for 4 months doing my dive masters.
Okay.
And I was diving 4 times a day, and it was really amazing. Like you go with with shark whales, and you go with like so many different kind of species, nudibranches. And when you go so often in the same island, the island is just 15 kilometers long. When you go so often in these places, you actually not only know the several species of fish, you know the actual fish that lives in the actual place that is territorial. You know, it almost has a name and everything. There was
Right.
one, for example, that was used to protecting a motorbike that was underwater, a damselfish that actually is a farmer protecting his land. Super funny. So at that point, after I started working a little bit as a dive master in Thailand, and after a while, I decided to go to Australia to keep on going into this travel with diving. And I wanted to go to the Great Barrier Reef in Cairns and working, but it was during the COVID times.
Ah,
So at that time, it was impossible,
yeah.
completely closed, and no more opportunities. Like the not even the Australians were getting the diving job. So why it will
Right.
be the foreigner travelers going for a working holiday visa.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it was actually interesting because how could you say? I think I am really curious person. I love a lot of different things, and I'm not always sure if it's just a quick love or if it's something that it's deeply into me. And after some years, I decided to go into. I was more thinking into how could I go a little bit towards marine conservation without being super sure of exactly what to do.
Right.
And I didn't have the energy. As I said, I was already did 3 times the first year of university, then got my bachelor's in international relations. I was not planning into restarting my studies,
Right.
into like restarting going to marine biology for 5 years and everything. So as I was doing something kind of related to business management and everything with international relations, I was thinking like, okay, I think this. could be an opportunity to be a project manager, for example, in marine conservation. So
Hmm.
you don't have the need so much of having marine biology skills, but it could be a field where all my skills and travels and experiences could be actually
Yeah.
working for. So I decided to do a business school in which I did a Master of Science in Project and Program Management and Business
Okay.
Development. And and now I actually finished it, and I had an internship, which is now in Blue Seeds. Blue Seeds is an agency in France that actually does, in big words, it will be marine conservation finance. It empowers marine conservation activists and actors to help them have the impact they want to have, like in the whatever
Wow.
is economic, social, ecological. And they have like a lot of different kind of projects. They are a private entity, but it's
Hmm.
really a funny role, let's say, because they are not a consulting company. They are more into creating projects and looking for partners for those projects and creating tools and everything. And when I saw actually the post about this internship, I was really like, my God, this is completely in marine conservation, but it actually asks more about collaborative,
Hmm.
partnership, collaboration, assistant, and everything. And they had a need. We have a tool that is called Blue Mooring that is for managing the mooring buoys actually in marine
Okay.
parks to avoid the anchoring, because in the Mediterranean Sea, like the most important kind of life, if we can say in some ways, will be the Posidonia. And
Okay.
Posidonia over there is the plant that actually plays the role like a nursery, plays a role
Yep.
against erosion. It is so super important, and having mooring buoys avoids the anchoring and everything.
Yeah.
So it's actually helping the marine protected areas to have this kind of tools. They have these systems to collect fees, to create self-financing mechanisms for MPAs to be more
Yeah.
sustainable in the future, because there is a terrible gap in the budget they should
And by the,
receive.
yeah, and by the plant, just to interrupt, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but
No, no.
just by the just to kind of clarify something for the audience, the plant you're talking about is a seagrass plant, right? And that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
When what happens is when boats come in and they anchor, they put their anchor down on the if they put their anchor down on the ground, then that as they drag or as the anchor drags, it can disrupt the seagrasses, and then so it ruins the seagrasses. And if enough anchors drop during that time,
Mm.
or over time, then it can ruin the seagrass habitats. It's a big problem that's happening in the Mediterranean, and so now we're seeing these moorings that basically, I guess it's. Can you describe what that mooring is, just for the audience, just to
Yeah.
show what it is?
Yeah. So yes, of course, of course. So actually, Posidonia, it is, as I see, a plant, as you said, a sea plant that actually grows like 1 centimeter per year. It makes
Mm-hmm.
like 1 meter per century, super slow. And every single anchory like takes like enormous time
Right.
of creating this kind of algae. And actually, what is an ecological mooring buoy is actually kind of a mooring buoy that is drilled, for example, into the seafloor. Depends of the seafloor, the sand and the rock, everything has a different kind of system that we will combine. And from that point, it will have like a middle intermediary buoy, which is
Mm-hmm.
floating in mid-surface to avoid actually the chain, the rope, to be like dragging all around all the time. So it's actually suspended from the anchoring with a middle buoy. And then there is the actual mooring buoy that is in the top and is actually a really big ball in the surface, which actually helps the boats to, instead of throwing the anchoring, they will just go grab the buoy and get more to it, get attached to it. And this way, it actually there is a lot lesser impact of this kind of boaters tourism that there is. In the Mediterranean, it is actually a problem because, as many places in Spain, in Italy, and even France, tourism is one of the most important businesses there is. So it is actually really hard because you cannot forbid boaters to be in this kind of base and everything, but the
Right.
pressure is enormous. There is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of boats every single day in the same bay. So you need more to think how to combine the kind of the business needs of
Mm-hmm.
the country, because it survives only with that. The region only survives with that, but
Yeah.
still controlling, still doing some affluence control. It should be, and with the mooring buoys is actually better, because if you forbid the anchoring in the area, but you just say you need to be attached in the mooring buoy, then you limit the area in the number of mooring buoys there is.
Right.
So if there are not, boaters will need to go in some other areas less populated. So it actually is a really good tool to solve that problem.
And so this is what part of what Blue Seeds does the management of these moorings, right? So, I mean, that's a I think it's really interesting when you talk about sort of your background and how you got involved with this organization. We don't often think, we don't have to think about how conservation is done. We always think, oh, I want to go into conservation. I want to, that means I have to become a marine biologist, I have to become a scientist, I have to go to school for 4 years. It's not easy, and it's not for everybody. And even people who do go into school for that, they end up not working in science, they end up working in another aspect of marine conservation. And I think it's important to identify, and this is one of these podcasts that does that, is the other opportunities that are out there, where it's like, you have to do the managing, like somebody has to look after these moorings. Somebody has to look after like the marine protected areas. How is it going to get financed? Who's going to work there? That's a big aspect to a lot of these conservation tools that get put in place. Scientists will go and maybe they'll say, yes, it's a good thing to do, or no, it's a bad thing to do based on research. But that's just the one aspect of it. You actually have to implement and execute what the suggestions are coming out of. There are a lot of people like yourself and people, your colleagues at Blue Seeds, that do a lot of work, managing these things and building these things, even, or buying these moorings or whatever, just in terms of all things management. I think it's important to acknowledge that it's a big part of conservation. Without organizations like Blue Seeds, it's very difficult for conservation to even happen. And that's because a lot of people just think that once you do the science, then we know the answer and now we can just do it. But there's other organizations that have to go out there that actually have to do a lot of the work. So I appreciate the work that you guys do there. It's really great. Can you just go into a little bit more of what Blue Seeds does and sort of your role there?
Yes, of course, of course. So actually, Blue Seeds is a company that was at first a project of another company called Vertigo Lab, which
Okay.
they were a consulting company in like in ecology subjects for the companies, for public entities and everything. And actually, Blue Seeds was created on the first analysis that a big problem that there is in the Mediterranean, for example, and in most places in the world, is that there is an enormous financial gap for the marine protected areas. Marine protected areas, let's say, there are promised like to have 1 million to be working and to create and to manage the area. But on the end, they only get like a 10%, 100,000, which is like, and they expect to have the same impact with
Yeah.
a budget that is like enormously lower than expected. So many times it is really sad, but there is you already spoke about in the podcast, but about the paper parks that they are created, but there is actually nothing being implemented, no
Yeah.
impact getting done in there. So actually it was created with that thing in mind. Today, Blue Seeds have like different projects into sometimes into like consultation, for example, for understanding the need, for example, to put the moorings, for example, or also the need that there is in places to implement new projects, but from local people, for example. There is something that is called like the Blue Business Incubator. That is also working actually in the West Africa, in Croatia, for example, in Mediterranean, and is actually helping people little business owners that, for example, have a restaurant that to be able to have sustainable practices within the area. So if for all the communities and all the people that live in the islands that is inside a national park, inside a protected area, that the businesses is actually thinking about community, thinking about the sustainability. Another thing, for example, will be in some countries in Africa, we did also, it's called for the transition of the fishers towards more sustainable practices, let's say. There is kind of two ways that you can convert fishermen into more sustainable practices. One is to helping them getting the tools and getting them the financing, for example, in the sense of the European Union gives grants for sustainable fisheries. But you need to prove that you're sustainable. And we help them to prove, to respond to the criteria of the European Union to get that financing. So we'll show them the way. We get them also a little bit of funds for buying the tools and everything. And in this way, they can have better practices. There is also, for example, the story of just converting their jobs of being rangers inside the marine protected areas instead of being fishermen. So it's
Wow.
actually also a good idea because the marine protected area is no more anymore paper. Is actually there is people controlling, and
Right.
with just something like that, you create jobs and you create opportunities and an actual also consciousness about the area.
Yeah.
For example, where I come from in Mallorca, we have the Posidonia police. Let's say there is some boats that actually go around the island looking for any boat that has an anchoring in Posidonia grass. And if they see, they can fine you, and it is a big fine and everything. So it is
Right.
actually a really good example.
Well, it's a huge example. As fishing goes, especially these days, it's not an easy, I mean, never was easy, but it's not easy to always go out and catch the same amount of fish and make the same amount of money to support their families. A lot of times you're hearing stories of fishers, especially artisanal fishers, local fishers that go out and can't find the fish, or it takes longer to find the same amount of fish. The catch per unit effort is a lot lower. And so being able to offer a willing, a fisher to say, actually, yeah, I'll go into marine protected area management and enforcement is a big deal, and it's providing them with a different opportunity, training them up, and then paying them I would assume some sort of regular salary that they can depend on and their family can depend on, and it takes away a lot of the guessing game and takes away another fisher that puts added pressure on a fishing population that's probably already decreasing. So that you get it gets interesting to do that, but it takes a lot of patience. It takes some experts to be able to, and a great relationship with the fishing community to say, hey, we have these opportunities for anybody who's interested. What were do you know what, like, how the people reacted, like the fishers reacted to this opportunity? Did a lot of people uh convert over? Like, how many people do you have in that program? Do you know?
So actually, I'm not the one working in that
Oh,
project
okay.
directly, but I still know that actually, yes, there is, of course, the need of people in the area managing already. Like, or we are from Bordeaux, from France, so of course, it is hard to just go in an area say like, okay, you should do like this, like this, like this. We have
Right,
like
of course.
ambassadors in the place that actually
Yes.
have a lot more contacts and actually explains to the people, inform them about the impacts. And as
Yeah.
you said, like, where fishing sustainably doesn't mean like just losing money as well, because you will get more fish in the next seasons. It's a lot more complicated than that, of course. I don't know the exact details, but I know that
Hmm.
we organize a lot of events and meetings for all the people to be able to actually gather in some kind of network in the community in the area to actually speak about the subjects, issues, and getting informed about everything. But myself, actually, I'm more working into the mooring boys thing, in the sense of the issue is that there is many mooring buoys in MPAs, but they are badly used. They are not. They have no. They're not controlling it, not looking how the people use it, not
Hmm.
doing maintenance. There is a lot of problems. That is not only installing the moorings, it's also managing them. Actually, we did create a tool which is called then Blue Mooring. And actually,
Hmm.
that tool, at first, it was created in a partnership with several MPAs to create a self-financing mechanisms. I explain myself. So, for example, for a mooring buoy that you decided to have free in the area, if you just ask for the boaters, for example, to pay like a little contribution to the marine protected area where there's mooring buoys, like €5 fee for the anchoring for a whole night or for a whole day in the mooring buoy, it's just a little participation. And this money creates an influx inside for the marine protected areas that actually will have a little bit more money to be able to invest in other kind of activities. It is also meant to alleviate the work of the managers. So, for example, back in the time, if you have like 100 boys around the marine protected area, you need to go with the boat all the time around, like patrolling all the time to be sure that the people are using correctly. Because if you're not patrolling, it is not only about money. Sometimes if you don't patrol, one director of ESMEDES, of the Marine Protected Area over there, he explained me that one day in one eco mooring that was not being controlled, they found 14 boats. One mooring buoy is for one boat, just for explanation. So like you
Wow.
see, like if you
Yeah.
don't do control, there can be a lot of different kind of
Right.
problems and issues. So what we created, it was a tool that was actually managing like a live monitoring of the buoys. Each buoy has a QR code, and they have tags for the people to scan to register or pay, depending on the buoy,
Ah,
if it is free or not free. It
okay.
allows, for example, the marine protected areas to do data collection to understand who is actually visiting the area, who is using this
Gotcha.
kind of mooring buoys, how many people is in the boat, and they just need to fill these kind of questions, like how many boaters and everything. And through our website of Blue Mooring, which is a platform, you can actually pay, book your moorings, find other ones in the Mediterranean Sea, and do all the fish collection and data collection. So it actually, on the same time, it allows you to know exactly which buoys are being used or not, and also to collect all data about maintenance, for example, and everything. So for now, it's quite in the Mediterranean Sea. Now we're also looking for Caribbean, for like places around there to implement, because it actually alleviates also a lot the job. So instead of having someone patrolling, all the acts in the area, he actually can dedicate this time to other activities. So my job in concretely was actually speaking with a lot of Spanish, or it can be different kind of actors actually,
Hmm.
private entities that are actually mooring a mooring zone and paying fees and whatever, or they can be also not natural parks that have some mooring buoys around. That are free of use of everything, or it can be sometimes also the municipalities, the own city halls that decided to put some mooring buoys in the bays around their area. So it's actually a lot of different kind of actors that that have the need actually to have a better management of this kind of buoys. So in the tools, we are allowed to see all revenue statistics, all data collection from the visitors, the boaters, how many people, live view. So it's actually a really good tool. It's just that we did create it as a self-financing mechanism for free in marine protected area, but we did invest, like, I think it's 3 years of developing
Hmm.
time for this
Yeah.
tool, with like several people being 100% on time on this. So
Yeah.
it's actually what we are seeking now is not actually making big money with the tool. It's not about that, and a lot. It's only being able to sustain the cost of just one salary of one person or two salaries of two persons, to be always working on that, and to always maintain the system, and to not have no financial benefits. Just with that tool, it actually helps out all of marine protected areas. We have like cases that they had all the area buoys for free. Then they just asked for little fees for every single buoy, and they were even for the payment of the platform, of the services of the platform, web platform. They actually it is actually an investment. You decide to pay, okay, like an amount of money, and then you get actually 10 times more, just because you're actually using the system, managing, collecting the fees,
Yeah.
collecting data.
That's insane. That's awesome. I mean, it's such a cool thing. I mean, nobody would ever think there's that much work that goes into managing moorings, but it is, and it's something that, like I said, it continues to protect seagrass beds. It continues to protect the environment for nursery habitats, for protection along the coastline. And in the Mediterranean, we definitely need this. So it's amazing that you're able to do this. Now, you said you at the beginning of this episode that you're an intern for this company right now.
Yes.
How long is the internship and what's next for you?
So for now, the internship, I'm about to finish it like quite soon. It is 6 months internship. I'm about my
Okay.
last months, my
Okay.
last month and a half, and they actually already proposed me like another year of contract. So actually
Nice.
quite nice. So yes, I'm quite happy actually, because the team is actually completely amazing. It is in a really
Yeah.
nice place in Bordeaux. Like, it is really good vibes. And honestly, I must say also, it is like, it has been so much of a good opportunity for me. Exactly what you were saying, like coming when I was like, okay, how can I go towards marine conservation? How can I go towards that direction from my business background?
Yeah.
When I was thinking at that point, I was really like, okay, I have no clue about where to start, about
Hmm.
what kind of ideas, what kind of entities. Is there really actually many jobs request on this side? And so on the beginning, when I saw that post, it was really like saying like, oh, an incredible opportunity. I'm really grateful actually to be here. But now
Yeah.
that I am in the field, I
Hmm.
actually realize like, actually there are a lot of opportunities. There are a
Yeah.
lot of different organizations that does more in the financing, more in the consulting, more in
Hmm.
the like NGOs, or like there is so many different companies that are organizations that are not about marine conservation in the fact of we have in our company a marine science officer,
Of
someone
course.
that is like a complete marine biologist and that
Right.
knows every subject that he can advise us better and is completely needed. But it
Yes.
is not only about having marine biologists in the team. We also like to actually have people from every kind of different background. So we
Yeah.
have people from more like politics, some people from more the public entities,
Yeah.
people from the business background, people from
Yeah.
the other one. So it's actually getting a complete team of that. And I think I thought there were like almost no opportunities, but now that I have this one in front of me, of course I'm grabbing it and going because I think it is perfect for me for my ambitions. Let's say to my actual ambition is to have as much impact as possible into this kind of ecological impact. I mean, and
Yeah.
doing holding these projects into allowing people to actually do their job because this is what we do. Marine
Absolutely.
biologists are not only, of course, but many people are in the field and they are at the
Yeah.
actual hands in the work doing the actual stuff. And it is amazing to have them, but it's actually you also need to give them as much tools and as much to make it as easier as possible for these people. Let's say.
Absolutely. I mean, and the thing is too, it's like it's a nice you're making a living out of this. You know, you're able to support yourself. You're working for a great company. You feel good about what you do, and you didn't need a science background to do that. And I think a lot of people get, I think they feel a little frustrated if science is not for them or it's not something that they're interested in, but they still want to help protect the ocean. This is a great example of how people can kind of continue on and find these companies and these organizations that do this type of management, that do this type of sort of fiscal financing of marine protected areas or any conservation effort. And I think that's an important part of marine conservation. And and I wouldn't even have known this if we didn't do these conservation journey stories, like with people like yourself. So I'm so happy that you contacted us. Now, what advice would you give, and to do this interview, but what advice would you give to people listening to this who may be in a similar situation? They have more of a business background or not a science background and want to get into marine conservation. What advice would you give them, and like where would you suggest they look, and sort of what types of organizations and companies they would look?
Of course. So actually, for me, the tool that I use all the time to get on date about any news of marine conservation organization jobs offer is actually just LinkedIn. It's not a big surprise,
Oh,
but
okay.
it's actually the more you get contacts in LinkedIn, the more you get companies, organizations into your kind of likes, the
Yeah.
more you have info about other kind of organizations. And
Right.
there is some big ones to start with, some really well known like for example, Blue Marine Foundation. I know, like we were supported also by the MAVA Foundation before Blue Seeds. So it's actually many companies and organizations. When you get actually into this kind of more management business style, let's say,
Yeah.
organizations, you actually get a lot more info about other ones. In the Mediterranean, there is also the Union for the Mediterranean. There is everything about the United Nations, the Barcelona Convention. There is like several structures about
Yep.
each thing and a little bit all around. It would be in Tunis, in Greece, in Spain, in France. So actually, there are many, many options, and you just need to actually. What I do is every time that I look for a news, that I'm reading a paper or magazine, and there is a name of an organization, I go check on LinkedIn, add it, and see like what it does exactly and everything. So there is, and we're just tapping marine conservation, financing, marine conservation, consulting. This is kind of you will
Okay.
get a lot of results from this kind of area that are not
Yeah.
the most known one, right? So usually people
Yeah.
think about Sea Shepherd or something like that,
Yeah, or
but a lot
Oceana or
more.
something like that. Yeah, but
Uh,
a lot of people apply to those, and they can get very competitive. And a lot of times they're looking for someone with a science background. So it's nice to like see, find ways to search and just use different keywords instead of marine biologist, like you said, marine conservation financing or what have you, and management or consulting could help, and you can come up with some great ideas and see some great opportunities from that. Alvise, I want to just say thank you so much for joining us on this episode. It's awesome to have you on here. It's awesome to see what you've done, what you've been able to do with your career, just even in this short period of time. And I'd love to invite you back on to get an update sometime, on what you guys are doing over at Blue Seeds and what you're doing in your career, and offer more inspiration to the folks who are listening to this podcast. I really appreciate you coming out and talking about this.
Thank you very much. It was really a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Alvise, for joining us here on the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I just want to say your story was incredible. Thank you for sharing it. I know it takes a lot for people to come on the podcast, to just any podcast. It's not an easy thing to share your story. Sometimes people might feel vulnerable. Some people may feel like, they don't belong on this podcast, but I absolutely think you do. And Alvise just proved it. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what you do. You don't have to even work in marine science or conservation to be on this podcast. If you have a conservation journey and you don't even think it's important enough, reach out to me. My Calendly link to schedule an episode is in the show notes. All you have to do is just go click on it. It's something that I feel is important to get everybody's conservation story. The more we share, the better we're off, and the more we can build upon our conservation journey. So there's no real bad story. There's always a good story, and Alvise just proved it, and I know you'll prove it too. But Alvise, thank you so much. I love how you have such a passion for marine conservation. You working for what seems to be a fantastic company, a company that I didn't even know existed until you showed us, so I appreciate that. Links to that, to blueseeds.org, is down in the show notes. And I want to thank everybody for listening. If you have a question or comment, or if you have a question for Alvise, please let me know. You can DM me at How to Protect the Ocean. I'll put you in touch. So DM me at How to Protect the Ocean, all one word. And thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. If you feel like this is shareable and somebody in your life needs to hear this, please feel free to share. It's free to share. It is all free. So feel free to share a free episode. And if you want to sign up for the Build Your Marine Science and Conservation Career, all you have to do is go to speakupforblue.com/career. That's speakupforblue.com/career. And thank you again for joining us on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you next time. Happy conservation.